It started with a sound Lila Morgan knew too well, the clink of crystal glasses against fine china. She had been a waitress long enough to recognize the rhythm of wealth, the unspoken language of Manhattan's elite. Tonight, the dining room of Bellagio's, the Italian restaurant where she worked double shifts, was a theater of money. Men in tailored suits talked deals over Chianti. Women in gowns worth more than Lila's yearly salary laughed with voices like polished glass. Lila balanced a tray of steaming plates, weaving between the tables. Her sneakers, worn thin, ached with every step. At 23, she was supposed to be in college finishing her degree in art history. Instead, she was here, serving pasta to billionaires and praying her tips would cover her mother's heart medication. That's when the room changed. The front doors opened, and a hush rippled through the restaurant. Victor Lancaster had arrived. Victor was 52, but he carried himself with the iron presence of a man who had never been told no. His silver-streaked hair was combed back with precision, his tailored navy suit fitting like armor. Behind him trailed two aides in black suits, but they might as well have been shadows. The maitre d' rushed forward, nearly bowing as he led Victor to the best table in the house. Lila froze for a beat. She had seen Victor Lancaster before, in the newspapers, on business magazines, at the corner store. Billionaire real estate tycoon, builder of glass towers that cut into the Manhattan skyline. A man whispered about in the same breath as ruthless and untouchable, but she had never seen him here. Never this close. Her manager's voice hissed in her ear. "Table 6, Morgan. Don't mess this up." Lila nodded, forcing her breath steady. She approached with her tray, her heart thudding. "Good evening, sir," she said, setting down a glass of water. Victor finally looked up at her. His eyes, gray, cold as steel, studied her in a way that made her skin prickle. Not like a customer looking at a waitress. Like a hunter sizing prey. "You're Lila Morgan." His voice was low, deliberate. Lila stiffened. "Yes, sir." "How do you—" He cut her off. "Sit down." She blinked, confused. "Sir, I'm working—" "Sit." His tone carried no room for refusal. Reluctantly, she slid into the chair opposite him, her apron stiff against the leather seat. The restaurant noise faded to a murmur around them, as though the entire room was watching. Victor leaned forward, folding his hands. "You want to save your family, don't you?" Her stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" He didn't blink. "Your mother's hospital bills, the mortgage on your apartment, your brother Ethan's tuition. All of it is hanging by a thread. One missed payment and it collapses." Lila's throat tightened. How could he possibly know? Victor's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I own that thread." She felt her hands trembling under the table. "Are you saying you bought our debt?" "I control the company that holds your loans," he replied. His words were smooth, like a lawyer reading from a script. "One signature from me and your family is homeless. One gesture and your mother never gets her surgery." Anger flared hot in her chest. "Why are you telling me this?" He leaned closer, his cologne sharp and commanding. "Because I'm offering you a solution." Then came the words that turned her blood cold. "Marry me, Miss Morgan." For a moment, Lila thought she had misheard. Her laugh was small, nervous, a reflex. "That's not funny." Victor's expression didn't change. "I don't joke. You'll marry me within the month. In return, your family's debt disappears. Your mother receives the best care. Your brother goes to school without worry. You will live in comfort for the rest of your life." She stared at him, stunned. "You're old enough to be my father." His eyes flickered. "I'm old enough to know what I want." Her voice cracked. "And what if I say no?" Victor finally leaned back, his face hardening. "Then the bank forecloses on your apartment by Friday. Your mother's operation is cancelled, and your brother drops out of college before he even begins. Do you want that on your conscience?" Tears burned at the back of her eyes. She clenched her fists in her lap, fighting them. "You can't do this," she whispered. "Yes, I can," Victor said evenly. "I already have." The silence between them stretched like glass about to shatter. At that moment, Claudia Hayes approached the table. A woman in her mid-30s, sleek in a black skirt suit. She carried herself with a predator's grace. Lila had never seen her before, but the way Claudia laid a hand on Victor's shoulder told her everything. Claudia's smile was sharp. "Is this the girl?" she asked in a low voice. Victor nodded once. "This is her," Lila's breath caught. She felt like the walls of the restaurant were closing in. Claudia's gaze swept over her like a judge delivering a verdict. She looks fragile. Are you sure she'll survive in your world? Victor's eyes never left Lila. She doesn't have a choice. The words struck like a knife. Lila wanted to scream, to stand up and throw the water in his face, but she couldn't. Not when her mother's life depended on this man's signature. The maitre d' passed by with nervous glances, but no one dared interrupt. Around them, the wealthy patrons pretended not to stare. To them, it was just another scene in the theater of money. Victor finally pushed back his chair, rising to his full height. So you have 1 week to decide, Miss Morgan. But I suggest you don't waste time. Your mother doesn't have much left. Claudia smirked faintly, her heels clicking as she followed him out. Lila sat frozen, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the chatter around her. The tray of untouched water glasses still sat on the table, her hands shaking too much to lift it. 1 week. One impossible choice. The apartment smelled faintly of lavender laundry soap and boiled pasta, the scent of survival. Lila pushed open the creaking door after her late shift, exhaustion clinging to her like a second skin. She half expected silence, the kind of heavy quiet that sometimes greeted her when her mother was too weak to get out of bed. Instead, she heard a muffled cough from the bedroom down the hall. "Mom?" she called softly, no answer. Only another cough, wetter this time. She hurried down the hallway, her sneakers squeaking on the worn linoleum. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of a bedside lamp. Her mother, Ellen Morgan, lay propped against a thin pillow, her skin pale, lips tinged blue. A tissue spotted with blood rested on the nightstand. Lila's heart clenched. She crossed the room quickly. "Mom, you're bleeding again." Ellen tried to smile, but her chest rattled as she spoke. "I'm fine, honey. Just a little cough." Lila shook her head fiercely. "This isn't fine. You need the surgery now, not 6 months from now." Her mother's frail hand reached for hers. "We can't afford to rush it. The waiting list, the insurance." But Lila knew better. The waiting list wasn't the issue. Money was. Everything came down to money. She fought the sting of tears, brushing Ellen's hair gently from her forehead. "Just rest. I'll figure it out." From the doorway came another voice. She shouldn't have to figure it out. Lila turned to see her younger brother Ethan, 21, tall and lanky, his dark hair falling into his eyes. He wore his cafe apron still dusted with flour. He had come straight from work. Ethan dropped his backpack onto the floor. "I picked up a double shift tomorrow. That should cover at least the utility bill." Lila's chest tightened. "You're already working 6 days a week, Ethan. You can't keep this up and go to classes." "I'll manage," Ethan muttered, avoiding her eyes. But she saw the truth in his slumped shoulders. His acceptance letter from Columbia University still sat pinned to the fridge untouched, like a cruel joke. She swallowed hard. "No, you're not dropping school for this." Ethan's frustration burst out. "What choice do we have, Lila? You think tips from Bellagio's are going to pay for Mom's surgery and my tuition?" "We're drowning," Lila froze. The words hit her because they were true. Ellen coughed again, weaker this time. "Stop fighting," she whispered. "We'll get through this somehow. We always do." But Lila could see it in her mother's eyes, the fear, the awareness that this time was different. This time somehow might not come soon enough. That night, after putting her mother to bed, Lila sat at the small kitchen table, bills spread out before her like a battlefield. Red stamped notices, medical invoices, student loan warnings. The numbers blurred through her tears. She held her head in her hands, trembling. Her phone buzzed. A new email notification. It was from the hospital. Final reminder, surgical payment due. Her chest tightened until she couldn't breathe. Suddenly, Victor Lancaster's voice echoed in her memory. "You want to save your family, don't you? Marry me." 1 week. Her stomach turned as if she'd swallowed poison. The idea of tying her life to a man like him made her skin crawl. But the bills before her said something else. Her mother's life hung in the balance. She whispered to herself, almost pleading, "There has to be another way." But the apartment stayed silent. The next morning, she left early for her shift, but Ethan caught up with her on the stairs. His face was drawn, his backpack sagging. "Lila, what are we going to do?" His voice cracked, the boyishness in it breaking her heart. She forced a small smile, though her insides were crumbling. "We'll find a way. I promise. But even as she said it, her chest ached with the weight of a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. 3 days passed like slow poison. Lila went to work, smiled for customers, poured wine with steady hands, but inside she was unraveling. Every hour brought her closer to the deadline Victor Lancaster had given her. 1 week. One impossible choice. On the 4th evening, as she was wiping down tables after closing, her manager poked his head into the dining room. "Lila, there's someone here to see you." Said it's important. She frowned. It was nearly midnight. Who could possibly? The answer walked in before she could finish the thought. Claudia Hayes. She looked like she had stepped out of a glossy law magazine. Tailored black suit, heels clicking against the tile, leather briefcase in hand. Her lipstick was the same shade as spilled wine. "Miss Morgan," Claudia said smoothly, her voice like silk stretched over steel. "We need to talk." Lila's stomach dropped. "About what?" Claudia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "About your future." She placed the briefcase on a table, unclasped it, and pulled out a thick stack of papers. With deliberate care, she slid the documents across the polished wood. "A marriage contract," Claudia said. "Drafted to Mr. Lancaster's specifications." Lila stared at the pages. Her throat went dry. "I told him I don't want this," she whispered. Claudia tilted her head like a teacher correcting a child. "Want has nothing to do with it. This is about need. And your family needs this, don't they?" Lila's hands curled into fists. "You can't force me." Claudia leaned closer, her perfume sharp and expensive. "No, let me show you something." She pulled out another folder. Inside were photographs. Her mother Ellen in a hospital bed, tubes attached. Ethan leaving his cafe shift, shoulders slumped. Bills, foreclosure notices, medical reports, all copied, all catalogued. Lila's chest seized. "How did you—" "We know everything," Claudia cut in. "Every weakness, every crack. Victor holds them all." Lila's voice trembled. "Why are you doing this?" "What do you get out of it?" For the first time, Claudia's smile flickered, a shadow passing over her expression. "Because Victor doesn't know what's best for him. He thinks you're his solution. Personally, I disagree." Her words stung like acid. "Then why—" Claudia interrupted, sliding a pen across the table. "Because the deal is already in motion. Sign this and your family survives. Refuse and they drown. Simple as that." Lila pushed the papers back, anger trembling in her chest. "You can't scare me into this." Claudia's expression hardened. She reached into the folder again and placed one more paper on top of the stack. It wasn't a bill. "It was a deed. The deed to your apartment," Claudia said softly. "I made a call this afternoon. The foreclosure has already been approved. By Friday, the locks will be changed. Unless, of course." Her eyes gleamed. "Are you signed?" Lila's breath caught. The floor seemed to tilt under her. "You're monsters," she whispered. Claudia didn't flinch. "We're realists. The world runs on leverage, Miss Morgan, and right now we hold yours." A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the restaurant refrigerator. Lila's mind screamed, "No, don't give in." But her heart heard something else. Her mother's cough, Ethan's quiet despair, the bills that bled red ink. Her hand hovered near the pen. Just inches away. Claudia's eyes glinted with victory. Then, for just a second, something shifted. Claudia's voice dropped almost a whisper. "You should know. Victor wasn't the one who bought your family's debt originally." "That was me," Lila froze. "What?" Claudia leaned back, satisfied by the shock on her face. "Yes, I secured it years ago. Victor only took control recently. If you're angry, be angry at me." Lila's blood ran cold. Why would Claudia do that? What possible connection could she have had to her family? But before she could ask, Claudia snapped the briefcase shut. "You have until Thursday. Don't be foolish." She stood, her heels echoing through the empty dining room as she walked away. The papers still lay on the table, the pen gleaming under the light like a loaded weapon. Lila sat there, her body shaking, her thoughts a hurricane. Not only was she trapped by Victor's demand, but now Claudia had revealed a truth that made everything worse. This wasn't just about a marriage. It was about a past betrayal Lila didn't understand yet. The church bells rang out across Manhattan, their solemn chimes swallowed by the roar of traffic and flashing cameras. To the world, it was a fairy tale wedding. Young beauty marries powerful billionaire. A Cinderella story for the modern age. To Lila Morgan, it was a funeral march. She stood at the back of St. Patrick's Cathedral, the weight of the white gown pressing down like chains. The silk bodice hugged her frame. The lace veil shimmered under the light, but none of it felt real. She looked at her reflection in a gilt mirror. Pale skin, hollow eyes, a bride carved out of fear. Her mother's fragile hand rested on her arm. Ellen had been discharged from the hospital just for this day, her breathing labored but steady. "You look beautiful, honey," she whispered. Lila forced a smile. "I'm glad you're here, Mom." Behind them, Ethan tugged uncomfortably at his borrowed suit. His jaw was tight, his eyes burning with anger he tried to hide. "This isn't right," he muttered. "I know," Lila whispered back, her throat thick. "But we don't have a choice." The doors opened. The music began. The crowd rose to their feet as Lila stepped onto the aisle. Rows of billionaires, politicians, and journalists watched her glide forward, their phones flashing like lightning. To them, she wasn't a woman. She was a headline. Lancaster marries Waitress in surprise ceremony. Victor stood waiting at the altar. His tailored suit gleamed, his silver hair catching the light. His expression was calm, almost bored, like a man closing a business deal. Claudia stood off to the side in a crimson dress, her smile sharp as glass. She looked like she owned the room, though it wasn't her name on the invitations. Lila's pulse thundered in her ears as she reached Victor's side. The priest began the vows. "Do you, Victor Lancaster, take this woman—" "I do," Victor said before the priest could finish. His tone clipped, decisive. The words hit Lila like a hammer. "And do you?" "Lila Morgan, take this man." Her lips trembled. For a moment, silence filled the cathedral. She could hear Ethan's breath hitch, see her mother's eyes shimmering with unshed tears. If she said no, everything crumbled. If she said yes, she chained herself to a man twice her age, a man who held her family's life in his fists. She swallowed hard. "I do." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras clicked furiously. Somewhere a journalist whispered, "America's Cinderella, waitress to wife." But inside, Lila felt nothing but cold. The ceremony blurred. Rings exchanged. A kiss that barely brushed her lips, perfunctory, businesslike. Victor's hand was warm but unyielding as he held hers up for the cameras. Outside, the steps of the cathedral had become a carnival of flashing bulbs. Reporters shouted questions. "Lila, how does it feel to marry one of America's richest men?" "Victor, was this love at first sight?" Victor simply smiled, pulling Lila closer, his arm firm around her waist. "My wife is everything I could want," he said smoothly. The crowd swooned. The fairy tale headline wrote itself. But Lila caught sight of Claudia at the edge of the crowd, lips curved in a knowing smirk. Their eyes met, and for a second Lila saw it. The contempt, the promise of something darker yet to come. At the reception, the ballroom glowed with chandeliers and gold-trimmed tables. Champagne flowed. A string quartet played. Guests toasted the happy couple. Lila sat at Victor's side, her smile mechanical, her hands folded in her lap. Every congratulation felt like salt in a wound. She stole glances at Ethan across the room, who looked like he wanted to overturn the cake table. Her mother sat quietly, a fragile ghost among titans. Victor leaned toward her. "Keep smiling. Cameras are everywhere." She forced her lips into a curve. "Is this what you wanted? A perfect show?" Victor's gray eyes studied her. "It's what we both need. You'll understand soon enough." Before she could respond, Claudia swept past, her dress whispering against the marble floor. She bent down, her words soft enough only for Lila to hear. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts, sweetheart. Nothing gold stays forever." Lila's stomach twisted. The rest of the night unfolded in a blur of speeches, clinking glasses and shallow laughter. Guests praised Victor's brilliance, admired Lila's beauty, whispered about the strange pairing. By the time the last guest departed, Lila felt hollowed out. She retreated to a balcony, the city lights sprawling below like a field of fireflies. She gripped the railing, fighting the urge to scream. Behind her, Victor appeared, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He handed her one. "To us," he said simply. She stared at the glass, then at him. Her voice was steady but cold. "This isn't a marriage. It's a sentence." Victor's expression didn't waver. "Sometimes a sentence is what saves you." The words chilled her more than the night air. The honeymoon suite wasn't a room. It was a fortress of glass and gold. Lila stepped into the penthouse of Lancaster Tower, a sprawling space on the 50th floor overlooking Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the skyline. Chandeliers glowed like constellations, and every piece of furniture looked as though it had been sculpted from wealth itself. To the world, it was paradise. To Lila, it was a cage. The first night passed in suffocating silence. Victor retired to his study after the reception, leaving her alone in the cavernous bedroom. She lay in the king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The sheets smelled faintly of lavender and power. By morning, the rules began. Victor appeared at breakfast, reading the financial section of the Times. His tone was calm, almost casual, but every word was command. No phone calls unless they're approved. Your contacts will be reviewed. Lila frowned. Excuse me? My contacts are none of your business. Victor lowered his paper, grey eyes cool. They are now. She set down her coffee cup with a sharp clink. I'm not a child. He didn't blink. Children can rebel. Wives obey, the words stung. She pushed back from the table, but Victor's voice stopped her cold. One more thing. You won't be working at Bellagio's anymore. As of this morning, you've resigned. Her heart lurched. Wait, what? You can't just... I already spoke to your manager. Victor interrupted smoothly. You belong here now. Her chest burned with fury. I need that job. I earned my own money. You won't need money, he said flatly. Not anymore. She felt her throat close. Work had been her last scrap of independence, the one thing that was hers, and now even that was gone. The days blurred into a routine not of her choosing. Guards shadowed her every move. Her wardrobe was replaced with designer dresses she hadn't picked. When she tried to call Ethan, the line was intercepted. A voice from Victor's staff politely informed her, Mr. Lancaster prefers scheduled family visits. It wasn't marriage. It was imprisonment with polished edges. One afternoon, as she sat on the balcony staring out at the city she no longer belonged to, Claudia appeared. She didn't knock, she never did. She simply walked in, heels clicking on marble, a predator in red lipstick. Settling in, Mrs. Lancaster? Claudia asked, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. Lila's jaw tightened. What do you want? Claudia's smile widened. To see how long it takes before you break. Lila's hands curled into fists. You're wasting your time. Am I? Claudia leaned closer, her voice dropping. I warned you. You don't belong in his world. You're just a temporary distraction. When he's finished, he'll toss you aside. And I'll be waiting. The words sliced through her. But Lila forced herself not to flinch. Later that evening, she tried again to reach Ethan. She managed to sneak her old phone from a drawer and dialed his number. It rang once before the line went dead. Moments later, Victor entered the room holding the phone. His expression was calm, but his eyes were ice. You went behind my back, he said quietly. Her pulse spiked. He's my brother! You can't keep me from him. Victor's jaw tightened. For a long moment, she thought he might shout. But instead, he set the phone on the table and said, Dinner at 8. Don't be late. Then he walked out. The control was worse than anger. It was absolute. That night, lying awake again, Lila whispered to herself, This isn't love. This is prison. Her chest ached with the truth, and yet deep down she felt something even more dangerous, a spark of curiosity. Victor didn't treat her like a wife, not even like a mistress. He treated her like an asset. Something to control, protect, and use. Why her? Why this? She remembered Claudia's words in the restaurant. Victor wasn't the one who bought your debt originally. That was me. The puzzle pieces didn't fit. Unless there was a deeper connection between Victor, Claudia, and her family, a secret that went beyond money. But if there was, she was trapped too tightly to find it for now. Rain lashed against the windows of Lancaster Tower, streaks of water distorting the glittering Manhattan skyline. Lila sat curled on the leather sofa, staring at the storm as if it mirrored her own trapped life. For weeks now, she had lived inside Victor's cage of luxury. Every move dictated, every breath monitored. But that night, something shifted. Victor was late, returning from a meeting. The penthouse felt hollow, silent except for the steady ticking of an antique clock. Out of restless boredom, Lila wandered into the study, a place she had been told not to enter. The door wasn't locked. That was his mistake. The room smelled of old paper and cigar smoke. Shelves of leather-bound books lined the walls, and the massive mahogany desk gleamed under the dim light. She hesitated, heart pounding, then stepped closer. On the desk lay a folder, half open, its pages spilling like secrets begging to be read. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't, but she did. Inside were financial statements, real estate contracts, and then, tucked between them, a document that froze her blood. Morgan Family Loan, Acquisition Agreement, her last name. Her family's debt. Hands trembling, she flipped through the pages. It was all there. The purchase of her mother's medical debt, the foreclosure papers for their apartment, the fine print that had strangled them for years. And at the bottom, a signature, not Victor's, Claudia Hayes. Lila's breath hitched. Claudia hadn't lied. She had been the one to buy their debt. But why? Why her family out of millions? She turned another page and gasped. There was a note scrawled in the margin. Keep concealed from Victor until transition complete. The storm outside thundered. Her thoughts raced. Claudia had orchestrated everything long before Victor ever came into the picture. The marriage, the leverage, it was all part of something bigger. Suddenly the door clicked behind her. Lila's heart leapt into her throat. She shoved the papers back into the folder, just as Victor entered. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was calm, but the undercurrent was sharp. Lila forced a steady tone. "Just looking for something to read." Victor's eyes swept the desk, lingering for a moment on the folder. Then, without another word, he crossed the room, closed it, and locked it in a drawer. "Some books aren't meant for you," he said simply. Her chest tightened. He knew, or at least he suspected. At dinner that night, she could barely eat. Victor spoke of markets and mergers, but she heard only Claudia's name echoing in her mind. When he excused himself to take a call, she seized her chance. Slipping down the hall, she found the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. But when the doors opened, 2 guards stood waiting. One shook his head politely. "Mr. Lancaster's orders, ma'am." No unaccompanied outings, the walls closed in. She forced a brittle smile and returned upstairs. Later, she sat alone in the balcony's chill night air, whispering to herself, "Why us? Why my family?" The next day, her answer began to take shape. While Victor was in a conference call, Lila overheard Claudia's voice through the slightly ajar door. She was speaking sharply, her tone laced with venom. "You can't keep protecting her, Victor. She doesn't belong here. You know it as well as I do." Victor's reply was low, strained. "This isn't about belonging. It's about what's right." Claudia laughed coldly. "Right? Don't kid yourself. You think marrying her erases what happened all those years ago? You think it'll bring back what you lost?" The words slammed into Lila like a blow. What he lost? What happened years ago? She pressed closer, but the conversation ended abruptly. When Claudia emerged, her eyes caught Lila's for the briefest second. A smirk curved her lips. "You should be careful wandering these halls, sweetheart," Claudia murmured as she passed. "You might overhear things you don't want to know." Lila's knees went weak. She retreated to her room, the storm inside her louder than the one outside. That night, as Victor lay asleep in the other room, Lila whispered into the dark, "There's a secret, a truth they're hiding, and I'm going to find it." Her resolve hardened. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was a prisoner with a purpose. The storm that had haunted Manhattan the night before had given way to a brittle gray morning. But inside Lancaster Tower, another storm brewed, one that no forecast could predict. Lila had spent the night piecing together scraps of overheard words, documents half read, and Claudia's taunts. Something had happened years ago, something that connected her family's suffering to Victor Lancaster himself. She couldn't stay in the dark any longer. That afternoon, while Victor was away at a board meeting, Lila slipped back into the study. The locked drawer taunted her, but desperation made her reckless. She searched the shelves, the cabinets, until her hand brushed against a brass key tucked behind a row of ledgers. Her pulse raced. She slid it into the drawer. It clicked open. Inside lay more files. Contracts, legal memos, letters. Her eyes scanned frantically until she found it. Case file Morgan versus Lancaster. Holdings her breath caught. She pulled out the folder and unfolded the papers. It was dated 15 years ago. Her father's name, David Morgan, appeared again and again. He had been a construction foreman, leading a crew on one of Victor's early real estate projects. The documents detailed a lawsuit, unsafe working conditions, cost-cutting measures, accidents covered up, and then a report. An accident. Her father had died on site. Lila's chest constricted. Her father hadn't just collapsed from a heart attack, like her mother had always said. He had died because of Lancaster Holdings, because of Victor. Her hands shook as she turned the page. At the bottom was a settlement agreement. The Morgan family had been paid off, silenced, and the signature authorizing it all belonged not to Victor, but to Claudia Hayes. Then a junior attorney. The room tilted. Her family's suffering, their crushing debt, her mother's silence. It all stemmed from this. From a death buried under money and power. Tears blurred her vision. She gripped the desk, whispering, "You killed him. You killed my father." The door burst open. Victor stood there, rain still on his coat, his face pale as stone. His eyes went to the open drawer, the papers in her hands. Lila spun toward him, fury shaking her voice. "You knew. All this time you knew my father died because of you." Victor's jaw clenched. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way." Her voice cracked with rage. "He's dead. My family was destroyed. And now you've trapped me here to cover it up." Victor stepped forward, his hands out as if to calm her. "Listen to me. I didn't order those cuts. I wasn't even at the site that day. Claudia," she signed off. "She made it disappear. I found out years later, and by then it was too late." "The damage was done," Lila's chest heaved. "So you marry me? That's your solution? To chain me here like some twisted form of penance?" Victor's face twisted with something she hadn't seen before. Guilt. "I thought, if I could give you security, a life without struggle, maybe it would make up for what was taken." Her tears spilled hot down her cheeks. "You can't buy forgiveness with a wedding ring." Behind him, another voice cut in. Cold, triumphant. "Finally," Claudia said, stepping into the study. "The truth comes out." Lila whirled, fury burning through her grief. "You signed the papers. You silenced my family." Claudia's smile was razor-sharp. "Your father was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Collateral damage, and your mother took the settlement willingly. Don't act like you're the only victim here." Victor's voice thundered. "Claudia, enough." But Claudia's eyes glittered. "You think marrying this girl erases your sins? You think she'll stay once she knows the truth? Look at her, Victor. She'll never forgive you." Lila's whole body trembled. She clutched the papers like a weapon, her voice raw. "You're right about one thing. I'll never forgive either of you." For the first time, Victor faltered. The mask of the ruthless billionaire slipped, revealing a man weighed down by guilt and desperation. "Lila," he said quietly, almost pleading, "you're not a prisoner. You're my chance to do right finally. Don't walk away from me." Her laugh was bitter, choked with tears. "You took away my father, my childhood, my freedom. And you expect me to stay?" The storm inside the study was louder than any thunder outside. Claudia leaned against the doorframe, satisfied. "I told you, Victor. She doesn't belong here." Lila's voice cut sharp. "No, I don't belong here. Not with you. Not with any of this." She shoved past them, the papers clutched to her chest, her heart pounding. For the first time, she wasn't just trapped. She had ammunition, proof, and she would use it. The elevator doors slid shut, and Lila clutched the folder to her chest as if it were armor. Her reflection in the mirrored wall startled her. Tear-streaked face, trembling hands, eyes burning with fury. She didn't recognize herself. She burst into the penthouse's main hall and dropped the folder onto the marble table. Pages scattered like shattered glass. The truth was everywhere now, impossible to hide. Moments later, Victor stepped in. His coat was gone, his face pale. For the first time, he didn't look like the untouchable billionaire splashed across magazines. He looked human, haunted. "Lila," he began carefully. "Please," she cut him off, her voice shaking but sharp as a blade. Don't you dare say my name like you care." Victor's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, but she backed away. "My father died because of your company," she spat. "You let Claudia bury the truth. You buried us." Victor's voice was low, heavy. "I didn't know the full extent until years later." "That doesn't matter," Lila shouted. "You built your empire on blood, and when you couldn't erase it, you thought you could marry me to wash it clean." His gray eyes softened, and for a flicker of a moment, there was no tycoon, no power. "Just a man weighed down by regret, I thought." He exhaled, almost broken. "I thought if I gave you everything, safety, comfort, a future free of struggle, it would honor what was lost. It would honor him." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Honor him. By chaining his daughter to the man responsible for his death." Victor's hand trembled slightly as he reached for her. I never wanted to chain you. I wanted to protect you. She recoiled as if burned. Protect me? You locked me in a tower. You cut me off from my family. You took my life, Victor. The silence stretched, heavy with unshed words. Then Victor said something that stopped her cold. I loved your father. Lila froze. What? Victor's gaze was far away, as if staring into a past only he could see. David Morgan wasn't just an employee. He was a friend. He believed in me when no one else did. His death, it destroyed me too. And Claudia. She covered it up before I could stop her. I was young, reckless. I let her handle everything. That's my guilt. That's my sin, Lila's voice cracked. And your solution is to marry his daughter. Victor's eyes met hers, raw with something almost desperate. It wasn't just guilt. It was you. From the moment I saw you at Bellagio's, you reminded me of him. His fire, his honesty. I thought maybe this was fate giving me one last chance to make it right. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they burned with anger, not grief. You don't love me. You love your chance at redemption. I was never a wife to you. I was your penance. Victor's face crumpled, the weight of her words sinking deep. For once he had no reply. The silence shattered when the door creaked open. Claudia leaned against the frame, arms crossed, eyes glittering with triumph. I told you, she drawled. She'll never forgive you. You can build towers, Victor, but you can't build love out of rubble. Lila's voice was icy. Get out of my way. Claudia arched a brow. And go where, darling? You have no money, no freedom. Without Victor, you're nothing but a poor waitress again. Lila's jaw clenched. Then I'll be a poor waitress. At least I'll be free. She shoved past Claudia, grabbing her coat from the rack. Victor called after her, his voice breaking for the first time. Lila, don't go. Please don't leave me like this. She stopped at the door, her back to him. Her voice shook, but her words were iron. You already left me, Victor. The day you let Claudia cover up my father's death. And then she was gone. The heavy door slammed shut behind her, the echo reverberating through the hollow tower of wealth. Victor sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. Claudia watched him, her smile thin and cruel. She's not coming back, she whispered. But Victor didn't answer. For the first time, the man who owned everything looked like he had lost it all. The tabloids hit the stands the very next morning. Lila hadn't even had time to catch her breath before her world was set on fire. She was sitting at the small kitchen table in her family's cramped apartment, nursing a cup of stale coffee when Ethan came crashing through the door. His face was pale, his hands shaking with crumpled newspapers. Lila, you need to see this. He spread them across the table. Headline after headline screamed in bold print, Waitress turned gold digger, Lila Morgan abandons billionaire husband. Lancaster marriage scandal. Young bride caught plotting against husband. Insiders reveal she married for money, tried to ruin him. Lila's stomach dropped. The photos were worse. Grainy images of her leaving Lancaster Tower, her face streaked with tears. Shots of her hugging Ethan on the street, framed to look like a secret lover's embrace. And the worst, an old picture from Bellagio's, her serving wine, captioned, "From tips to millions, the rise and fall of a modern Cinderella." Her hands trembled as she whispered, "She did this, Claudia." Ethan's jaw clenched. "She's poisoning the media against you." Before Lila could respond, the phone rang. Ellen, weak from her illness, answered. Her voice faltered, and she passed the receiver to Lila. On the other end was a stranger's voice, dripping with scorn. "Gold digger. Hope you choke on his money." The line went dead, more calls followed. Anonymous numbers. Hateful messages. Neighbors whispering in the hallway, glancing with pity or worse, contempt. By evening, reporters had gathered outside their building, shoving microphones at anyone who came or went. Ethan nearly got into a fight trying to push past them. One reporter shouted, "Lila, did you plan to expose Mr. Lancaster's secrets all along?" Another yelled, "How much did he pay you to marry him?" Lila's face burned as she shoved through the crowd, her brother shielding her. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than ever. The TV blared with a news anchor reciting the scandal. Sources close to Lancaster Holdings suggest that Lila Morgan manipulated her way into the billionaire's life, exploiting his grief and attempting to sabotage the company from within. Lancaster himself has refused to comment, but insiders hint at legal action. Lila turned it off, her chest tight. "They're painting me as a monster. Ethan slammed his fist on the table. We can fight this. We have the documents, the proof of what they did to Dad. But Lila shook her head. If we go public now, they'll bury us before we even open our mouths. Claudia controls the narrative. Victor, he's silent, which means he's letting this happen. Her mother, pale and trembling, whispered from the couch, I can't go through this again. Not after your father. Lila rushed to her side, tears stinging her eyes. I won't let them hurt you, Mom, I promise. But inside she felt powerless. Claudia had the media, the money, the influence. And Victor, his silence was the loudest betrayal of all. That night Ethan returned late, his shirt torn, a bruise forming on his cheek. What happened? Lila gasped. Some guy outside the cafe recognized me, Ethan muttered. Said I was leeching off Lancaster's money. When I told him to back off, he swung at me. Lila's heart broke. This is my fault. Ethan shook his head. No, this is theirs. Claudia's, Victor's, they started this war. She clenched her fists. The anger that had been simmering now burned hot. Claudia had crossed a line. She wasn't just attacking Lila. She was destroying her family and Victor's silence. That was as good as complicity. As the city slept, Lila sat awake, staring at the stack of documents she had taken from the tower. They were her only weapon. Proof of her father's death, Claudia's cover-up, the blood money that silenced her family. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried steel. If they want a war, I'll give them one. The apartment was silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the muffled noise of reporters outside. Lila sat at the kitchen table, papers spread in front of her, her head buried in her hands. She hadn't slept in days, her phone buzzed. For a moment she thought it was another hate call, but the screen showed a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Sarah. Sarah had been her co-worker at Bellagio's, one of the few friends she had before her life spiraled. Lila hesitated, then answered. Lila? Sarah's voice trembled. I don't know if I should be calling, but I have something you need to hear. Lila straightened. What is it? Sarah whispered. I was working late the night Claudia came in with Victor. I recorded something. At first I thought it was nothing, but now, after what they're saying about you... Static crackled. Then a recording played, Claudia's voice sharp and unmistakable. Once she's in his grasp, she won't have a way out. The debt ties her family down. She'll have no choice but to stay. Victor's reply followed, weary but clear. This isn't what I wanted, Claudia. Then Claudia again. It doesn't matter what you want. She's leverage. Nothing more. Lila's chest clenched. Proof. Actual proof that this wasn't love, it was entrapment. Her voice shook. Sarah, why didn't you tell me sooner? I was scared, Sarah admitted. But now, I can't let them destroy you. Lila closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. You just gave me the one thing I needed. When the call ended, she clutched her phone like it was a lifeline. The recording, combined with the documents about her father's death, was enough to shatter Victor's empire. Enough to silence Claudia, but how? The media was already against her. No one would believe her word alone. That night, as she paced the apartment, Ethan stepped in with a determined look. We don't need them to believe just you. We need them to hear it. Play the recording in front of everyone. Public. Live. Somewhere they can't spin it. Lila frowned. Where? Ethan's lips curved into a grim smile. The Lancaster press event. They're announcing that new skyscraper next week, right? Claudia will be there. Victor, too. You show up and you drop the truth in front of every reporter in New York. Her heart pounded. The idea was reckless, dangerous, but also brilliant, Ethan, she whispered. They'll try to stop us. Let them try, he said. We've been surviving their control for years. It's time we fight back. For the first time in weeks, Lila felt a flicker of hope. The following days were a blur of preparation. Sarah emailed her the full recording, encrypted and backed up in multiple files. Ethan helped her organize the documents, highlighting signatures, dates, everything that proved the cover-up. But Claudia was already tightening her net. Reporters continued to harass them. Online articles painted Lila as unstable, manipulative, a social climber gone rogue. One evening, as Lila returned from the grocery store, a car slowed beside her. The tinted window rolled down. Claudia sat inside, her smile cold. Still fighting, sweetheart? You should know, it won't end well for you. Lila glared, clutching her grocery bag. You're terrified. That's why you're here. Claudia's eyes narrowed. Terrified? No, amused. Watching you flail is entertainment, but don't mistake pity for mercy. Walk into that press event and you'll regret it. The car pulled away, leaving Lila trembling but more resolved than ever. That night she sat with Ethan and Sarah, the recording playing softly on repeat. Each word from Claudia fueled her fire. Each line was a nail in Claudia's coffin. Ethan squeezed her hand. This is it, Lila. This is how we take them down. She nodded, her jaw set. For Dad, for Mom, for all of us. The plan was clear. On the day of the press event, she would walk into Lancaster's glittering stage and turn it into his reckoning. The ballroom of the Lancaster Grand Hotel glittered like a palace. Crystal chandeliers spilled light over rows of reporters, investors, and city officials. On stage, a massive banner read, Lancaster Holdings Building the Future. Victor Lancaster stood at the podium, composed as ever, his deep voice echoing through the hall. Today marks a new era for our company. This skyscraper will stand as a beacon for New York, a symbol of... The double doors at the back of the room swung open. Every head turned. Lila Morgan walked in. Her heart hammered, but her steps were steady. Ethan flanked her side, carrying a folder. Sarah slipped quietly through the crowd, her phone in hand, ready to stream live. Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread like fire. That's her. The waitress. The runaway wife. Victor's voice faltered for the first time. Lila. Claudia, seated near the stage in a blood-red dress, stiffened. Her eyes narrowed, but her smile stayed fixed. Lila climbed the steps, her hands trembling only slightly as she took the microphone from its stand. The room buzzed with anticipation. Her voice, though soft at first, carried a razor's edge. You've all read the headlines about me. Gold digger, manipulator. A woman who tricked her way into Victor Lancaster's life, the crowd murmured. Cameras zoomed closer. Well, here's the truth, she nodded to Ethan. He opened the folder, holding up the documents. 15 years ago, my father, David Morgan, died working on a Lancaster project. Unsafe conditions. Corners cut. His death was buried under money and lies, gasps erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Lila's voice grew stronger. The person who silenced it all? Not Victor. Not at first. It was Claudia Hayes. She gestured toward Claudia, whose smile had frozen, her knuckles white on the chair arms. And I have proof. Sarah tapped her phone, projecting the audio across the speakers. Claudia's voice filled the ballroom, dripping with malice. Once she's in his grasp, she won't have a way out. The debt ties her family down. She'll have no choice but to stay. Then Victor's weary reply, This isn't what I wanted, Claudia. And again, Claudia. It doesn't matter what you want. She's leverage, nothing more. The room exploded. Gasps, shouts, the furious clicking of cameras. Investors muttered angrily. Reporters surged forward. Claudia shot to her feet, her face twisted. That recording is doctored. It's a lie. But the crowd wasn't buying it. The panic in her voice betrayed her. Lila's eyes blazed. You trapped my family for years. You orchestrated this marriage. You buried the truth of my father's death. And you dared to paint me as the villain. Her voice broke, but she held firm. No more. The world knows who you are now. Claudia lunged toward the stage, but security intercepted her. Investors shouted for her resignation. One man in a gray suit yelled, You've cost this company billions. The once glamorous lawyer was dragged out of the ballroom, her protests drowned by the storm of outrage. Lila turned back to the microphone. Her gaze met Victor's. He stood frozen at the podium, his face a mask of devastation. Cameras caught every flicker of his expression. Shock, guilt, sorrow. Lila's voice softened, trembling. And Victor Lancaster? He wasn't innocent. He let this happen. He let Claudia bury my father's death. And when the guilt ate him alive, he thought chaining me to him would make it right. The room was silent now, every eye locked on them. Victor finally spoke, his voice raw. She's telling the truth. Every word. The admission hit like a thunderclap. Reporters shouted questions. Investors stormed out. Lancaster Holdings' shining event had collapsed into chaos. Victor stepped toward Lila, his gray eyes hollow. I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted to give you the life your father would have wanted. But I see now I only stole more from you. Tears stung her eyes, but she shook her head. You can't erase the past with money. Or with me, she dropped the microphone. The crash echoed through the ballroom. Then she walked away. Ethan and Sarah followed, shielding her from the storm of cameras. Behind her, Victor stood alone on the stage, the empire he had built crumbling around him, the truth laid bare for the world to see. The city hadn't stopped buzzing since the press conference. News outlets replayed the recording on loop, analysts debated the collapse of Lancaster Holdings, and headlines screamed about the fall of a titan. But in a quiet corner of Queens, far from the skyscrapers and flashing cameras, Lila found peace for the first time in years. She sat by the window of her mother's apartment, the spring sunlight streaming through thin curtains. Ellen rested comfortably on the couch, her color slowly returning after a successful heart procedure, paid for not by Lancaster money, but by a settlement forced after the scandal. Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through his college acceptance packet, with a grin that made him look 5 years younger. For once, the air wasn't heavy with dread. It was light, fragile, but real. Lila exhaled deeply. She hadn't realized how long she'd been holding her breath. The knock at the door startled her. Ethan opened it, and there stood Victor Lancaster. Gone was the armor of tailored suits and polished power. His hair was unkempt, his suit rumpled, his eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. He looked like a man hollowed out by loss. Ethan stiffened. "You're not welcome here," but Lila rose, her gaze steady. "It's okay." Victor stepped inside, his presence smaller than she'd ever seen it. He held no guards, no entourage, just himself. "I came," he said quietly, "to say goodbye." Her mother stirred on the couch, watching silently. Victor's eyes lingered on her, then shifted back to Lila. "The board has forced me out. Lancaster Holdings isn't mine anymore. Claudia is finished, but so am I." Lila folded her arms. "So what do you want from me? Sympathy?" His lips curved bitterly. "No, I don't deserve that. I only wanted you to know. You were right. About everything. I tried to make amends the wrong way. And in the process, I hurt you more than anyone ever should." Silence filled the room. Outside, a car horn blared faintly, a reminder that the world went on indifferent. Victor's voice broke. "I loved your father, Lila, and I failed him. When I saw you, I thought, maybe I could keep a piece of him alive by protecting you. But all I did was cage you. I don't expect forgiveness, I just hope you'll be free now." Her throat tightened. For a moment, she saw not the ruthless billionaire, but a man crushed by regret. "You can't fix the past, Victor," she said softly. "But you can choose to stop hurting people in the present." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I'm leaving the city. Maybe I'll disappear altogether. Without power, without money, maybe I can finally learn what it means to live honestly." He turned to go, but paused at the door. "Take care of them, Lila. Make a life that isn't defined by my mistakes." And then he was gone. The silence he left behind was different this time. Not heavy, not suffocating, just empty. And in that emptiness, something new could grow. Ethan muttered, "Good riddance." But Lila only whispered, "Goodbye." Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the scandal faded from the front pages. Another billionaire fell, another celebrity rose, and the world moved on. But for the Morgans, life was no longer survival. It was healing. Ellen regained strength, her laughter soft but steady. Ethan prepared for his first semester at Columbia, his future wide open. And Lila, she returned to Bellagio's, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Serving tables again felt like reclaiming the part of her life, stolen by Victor's gilded cage. One evening, Sarah joined her after a shift, clinking coffee mugs together. "You did it, Lila. You stood up to them. You won." Lila smiled faintly. "I didn't win. I just survived." Sarah shook her head. "No. You built something stronger out of the wreckage. That's what real victory looks like." Later that night, Lila walked home alone. The city lights stretched endlessly. No longer towers of oppression, but sparks of possibility. For the first time, she didn't feel small beneath them. She thought of her father, of his hard hands, his steady laugh, the way he'd kissed her forehead before long workdays. She imagined him walking beside her now, proud. Her whisper carried into the cool night air. "I'll live the life you wanted for us, Dad. I'll make it count." The pain was still there, yes, but it no longer controlled her. It had become part of her strength. And as she stepped onto the quiet street, free at last, Lila Morgan smiled, not the smile of a gold digger, not the smile of a prisoner, but the smile of a woman who had survived the fire and come out whole.